In this episode, we dive deep into two things you can truly control: your mindset and your actions, and how mastering them can transform your life. We explore why happiness is an inside job and how to break free from overwhelm of social media. And you'll also learn how to identify your core values and use them to guide you to create more joy, purpose, and authenticity. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest to Find Meaning. Now, let's dive in. There are only two things that we can control: how we respond to our thoughts and our actions. David, tell me more.
So when you asked me to do a statement for this, I was like, what will I go with? And over the last few years, last 10 years of personal development, a lot of what I had to do was realize that there were so many things which I couldn't control, which were influencing me and affecting me, and I was taking them on board, and it was hard, and there were very few things that I could ultimately control. And so when I started coaching, when I started doing more of the life coaching stuff, before I got into the speaker coaching, I went, okay, there's probably only two things that we can realistically control: how you respond to your thoughts, and respond being a very clear and very deliberate word, because I spent so much time in my life reacting to my thoughts, and even now they'll catch me out. And then what you choose to do with that information. So, and there is a little caveat to this, and I remember saying that I did it on a video, I think it was last year, and one of my friends, Charlie, who had ADHD and autism, she turned around and she went, she says, but with ADHD, she goes, I can't do either of those things. And so I flipped it a little bit and went, the only two things we can control eventually are how we respond to our thoughts and our actions, because sometimes there are things which happen and we just don't know what's going on. And then we realize what's going on and we're like, whoa, hang on, put the brakes on, and we can slow down a bit. But I do tend to work very much on the idea now that there's only a couple of things that I can truly control. And when I let go of the other stuff that I can't control, it makes me so much happier. But there is an overlap between those two places for me. The circle of what I can't control is absolutely huge. The circle of what I can is tiny, and they overlap a little bit. And I call that place influence. Because even though I can't control what's going on in the rest of the world, I can't control what's going on in Gaza or the Ukraine or in the US, anywhere. If I choose to do something which can help in that direction, I can have an influence, whether that is post about it, whether that's talk to a friend about it, have a conversation, whether that is donate money to a cause. There is an influence which I can have. But that true space of what I can control is how I respond to my thoughts and the actions that I take.
You know what? We had a conversation about this last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
And actually, this is good timing, because last night I caught myself again getting caught up in the whole US, the whole world thing, and it can be so overwhelming. So I literally made a pact with myself last night that I'm going to rein myself back in. I'm not going to scroll through TikTok and social media and allow myself to get caught up with all that stuff going on, all the shit, because it's so overwhelming, and it made me feel powerless.
Yeah.
But what I've come to realize is that if I turn it around and decide, you know what, I'm not going to get caught up in all that crap. What I'm going to do is do what I can to impact my own world. So that could mean things like I might post some videos on how you can improve yourself. I might go and do some meditation. I might allow myself to raise my vibration. I might go and smile more and be happy. And when I walk around, look as though, who is this guy? Because That's the stuff I can control.
Yeah.
And I can't control anything going on in that world because it's not, I haven't got the power. It's more that I'm giving my power away to it.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love what you're doing there. It's that intentional choice of, but I think sometimes we get, well, I think often, not sometimes, often we get to that intentional choice when we're so far down the rabbit hole, it becomes really uncomfortable. And I stopped watching, I mean, I used to watch BBC News years ago, so it must be 15 years ago. And I remember just going, I'm not going to watch this anymore because I'm waking up in the morning and I'm feeling so bad. Because the reason that we continue to scroll, the reason that we click on these things, we like a trauma. The phrase rubbernecking, as you drive down one side of the motorway, there's an accident on the other side, you are having a look, because it's like a human reaction. It's like a psychology thing. But what happens is that the people who want us to, the social media companies, marketeers, and I'm not blanketing all marketeers with this if anyone's watching, so don't come after me later on, but people who are using psychology to market know these tricks. They know what they need to do to keep you glued on it. And I remember having a conversation with my youngest, who's now 14, who got really frustrated when he was on YouTube. He said, it keeps showing me things which I didn't ask for. And I said, that's its aim. Its aim is to go, oh, you like that? Well, let's give you a little bit more of that. And then it will occasionally throw in something which is so far left field or so far right field to see how you respond. It will throw things in which you don't expect to see what your reaction is to it is. And then it will go, I've learned something about you now. I know if I show you this thing over here, which you've not asked to look at, but you watch it for a certain period of time, then I know that I can do more of that. And then there's the demographic. So the only way to do it, and I say the only way to do it, and for me, there's a really interesting balance in all of this, is that it comes down a lot to individual responsibility, that we have to make that choice as to what we control. So again, back to how we respond to our thoughts and our actions. But there is a bigger responsibility in society in general to stop doing things to try and distract us. It's I stopped drinking 7 years ago, and I'm not saying that because there's a little halo above my head and look how wonderful I am. But I still have a mate who turns around and says, when are you going to start drinking again? And that is the equivalent of what we have. Is there's people who want to disconnect from the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings, and the psychology. Yeah, you've got someone behind them who keeps putting it in front of them going, yeah, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And we've only got a certain amount of energy to go, no, I'm not interested, before we just go, yeah, all right, I'll have a look at it then. And then you're in that spiral and that wormhole and that rabbit hole, and off it goes. And it's the individual responsibility piece is huge. But we need to look wider than that. We need to look wider at what society does to draw us back in. And we all want to be liked. We all want to be part of something. We all want to be seen and heard, because that raises our status. And when we do something different, we're not saying we're not heard. It lowers our status. It's a fascinating thing to play with. It really is. To sit and observe it from inside it and go, oh my God, I'm stuck in this myself. How do I get out of this? It's crazy stuff.
There's a couple of things there. The first thing is, what I've come to do myself is, when I find I got an urge to look at social media or whatever it is that I'm looking at kind of reducing, I allow myself to go into that feeling of wanting to do it and exploring around that, because quite often there comes a level of disconnection, or that could be a sense of loneliness. We had a discussion about yesterday's podcast. There could be a level of anxiety. It could be fear, but you just want to know more and more and more.
Yeah.
And it's exploring them emotions, so much so that if you keep digging, the more you dig, the deeper you go, the more you find out. And quite often, and I always talk about this in a big, big way, inner child healing. And quite often it goes down to that inner child that perhaps got hurt at a very, very early age, and it's wounded all this trauma. And as you said, we like good trauma, don't we? But it's allowing ourselves to heal that trauma. And then another couple of things was the question is, what can we do in order to counteract all that rubbish coming in? So things like finding people who inspire you, who make you, who you admire, and joining and watching more of that. And also you can, I think, I did it before, where you can pick some dots in the corner and say, I don't want that. You won't come again.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the individual responsibility piece is what can you do to protect yourself from those things? And just going to touch on the inner child stuff. I've got a very good friend, Brooke, who talks a lot about inner child work, and we all have something in the past somewhere, and it doesn't have to be a major trauma. It can be little traumas repeated over a period of time. And we always respond to it in different ways. I know Brené Brown talks about comparative suffering, that we will be suffering with something, and then we'll see somebody who's suffering with something which we believe is bigger, and we'll go, well, what we've got going on isn't as important, so why am I even worrying about it? It's there's always somebody worse off than me theory. Well, at the end of the day, you feel what you feel, and you should be allowed to feel it. But it's really interesting, coming back to the how do you protect yourself from those things out there? And I think this is where there's a pendulum swinging. This is where there's a continuum, because we could just shut ourselves off from anything which we disagree with, we dislike, which causes us an emotional, psychological harm. But I don't think that does us any favors. I think we have to be very careful with what we do. I know there's people out there who have totally differing experiences and viewpoints to me. And my question is, what can I learn from them, or what are they seeing? What are they seeing here, which I'm not? And the Buddhists have an amazing concept of emptiness, which is, you have this thing, and this cup has nothing. It's no emotion to it at all. I mean, apart from the fact that I look at it and it says, I'd rather be in Birmingham. So that makes me feel happy. So I feel happiness when I look at that. There's a bit of tea in the bottom. You might be able to see that. That makes me happy. But if I drink the tea, that might make me sad. And the thing is, it doesn't make me do anything. It's my response to it. So having somebody who can look at this thing from a different perspective and give me a different view, and be able to have a civil conversation around that is a beautiful thing. One of the challenges I see is that we're pushed too much in this dichotomous direction, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of the lockdown and the pandemic. But that was a very good example of how it pitted two groups of people against one another, and it's never just about two groups of people. But you can protect yourself, but you also have to let those things in so you can have an appreciation and widen that circle of your knowledge. But what's really interesting, and you talked about, here's this thing, but what's underneath it? Anger was a huge thing for me over the years. And when I look at anger and what it is, I realize that it probably wasn't anger. It was frustration or sadness or not being seen or not being heard. All of those things which kind of go down underneath it. And those days where maybe you're reacting in a negative way to something which is going on in the world, because we can shut out the news, we can shut out social media, we can shut out all those people who we just don't want to engage with. But there will be a point where something absolutely normal will happen, and we'll just lose it, or something will go on, and the digging goes on to understand. Well, what's led to that point? I know being tired or being hungry or not being productive. I know all these things which can be factors so that I have a much smaller ability to respond to what's going on around me, and it goes from response to reaction. And that's where the curiosity comes in, is, well, okay, what's gone on for me which I could have changed, or I can't change it, but what can I do next time?
Yeah, nice. I like that. So Dave, tell us about yourself. Who is Dave James?
There we go. But the thing is, I was saying to a friend about this the other day, I've got a thing on there about what I do. That's a banner I take out to events. I've changed my LinkedIn profile since. It's like, oh my God, why did I do that? So about me. So I'm dad of three. I'm currently separated, currently going through a divorce, which is its whole test on reaction and response. From Birmingham originally, live now in Bromsgrove in Worcestershire, which is about 12, 13 miles outside. I've had a fairly interesting career path. I started off getting kicked out of school at 16. I was a computer programmer for a while. I got very, very heavily into the computing world. I was a bit of a geek, bit of a nerd, still am in many ways. And then when I failed a number of computing courses, I left home and I got a job working in a nursing home. So I got a job working, wiping people's bums for a living. It was one of the best jobs ever because you got to learn about people. You got to learn about how to, then in my early 20s, I had to interact with people in a different way and move away from that, oh, it's Friday and Saturday night, I'm going out for a few drinks, to, well, actually, I might be working a shift on a Friday or Saturday night. So it changed that whole kind of thing for me. I then moved into nursing because I realised I needed more responsibility, eventually working in A&E for 3 years, which is where I met my ex, and we started that family. And then we moved back to the Midlands. I was in Oxford, moved back to the Midlands and retrained as a podiatrist, as a foot and leg specialist. And that's where I've spent the bulk of my healthcare career, is as a foot and leg specialist. And picked up a master's degree, ran my own business, worked for the NHS as a manager, taught students, started a charity, all this kind of, the cool stuff which you get up to, particularly when you get bored easily and you have to have something in your life to distract you. And then 2018, I decided that I didn't want to be in that podiatry business anymore, and I sold it. I sold it to a colleague who was a student of mine, and stepped away from it and moved into coaching. And I have been coaching since, and that coaching has shifted from a business and marketing for healthcare professionals, because that's what I knew, growing a 5-figure business from nothing through to those 5 figures over 8 years, and then selling it, which is unusual in the podiatry world to sell a business. And then during lockdown, people were going, my life's a bit crap. Can we talk about it? It's like, yeah. And then realized that I was going through that whole journey with separation. I was looking more at me. I was more of a life coach. And then because speaking has been such a big thing for me in terms of my personal growth and development, and also lead generation and business, I realized how much I enjoyed speaking. So I threw myself into speaking a lot more a couple of years ago. And then why am I doing life coaching? Why am I getting geeky on speaking? Why am I speaking? Why don't I just bring it all together? And then decided I was going to coach business owners and leaders around speaking, as well as hosting events, as well as speaking, and a bit of stand-up comedy on the side. So the career has been a bit of an interesting one. But I suppose the bigger story for me is that the underlying bit. This is the bit which people don't generally talk about because it's vulnerable and they don't like to be seen in anything other than perfect and wonderful, which obviously I am. Was that I was in? Yeah, I mean, look at me. I quite often say, and I do this a lot. Even at gigs, I say, you can't polish this, but you can roll it in glitter, but it will cost you extra. And when I was in hospital as a child, I had spina bifida and a club foot, and that you in many ways underestimate that being in hospital as a child is a big thing. And my experience in hospital as a child was okay. There was one moment where, as on the children's hospital ward in Birmingham, they did bring in the Daleks one day. But that was, when you're sort of five years old, that's quite scary. But the scariest thing is they brought members in of the Birmingham City football team, which is far scarier, to be honest, than the Daleks. And so I was in hospital as a kid. That gave me, with the spina bifida, that gave me various issues. Back issues, ulcerated my foot at 20, which is how I eventually ended up in podiatry, because it was me trying to find out more. And then when I was 14, I had a friend at school who was abducted and murdered, a young man by the name of Stuart Goff. And my way of expressing how I wanted to communicate with the world was via anger. That was the only way in which I communicate. Everything was about anger. And that went with me right the way through my life until 2015, when my ex turned around to me and said, right, get out of the house. I've had enough of this. And it was that pivotal moment where you realize you're about to lose everything and you have to do something. Because I thought it'd been okay up until that point. It was like, yes, anger, break a few things. No one gets hurt physically. Psychologically, we're all a bit broken. Kids see this stuff. But we all hug afterwards and everything's okay. And that was the moment where I realized that no, it wasn't. And I had to do something about it. And that was the beginning of my big, grand personal development journey, where you buy books and you start reading them, and you listen to podcasts and you start meditating and all of the stuff which goes with it. And it opened up a whole new it opened up a whole new world to me, and it then changed over the 3 years after that. It changed the course of what I was doing within my career, and eventually selling the podiatry practice. And now, as much as I try and get away from men's mental health stuff, it still creeps up on me, and people come to me and go, "Dave, can you come and talk about anger to someone, or can you come and talk about men's mental health because you've got experience of it?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, then I can come and do that." So it's been an interesting journey. There's definitely the two strands of the professional side and the strands of the personal side, and now with the speaking, they dovetail. I get to stand up and talk about the personal stuff. I get to show people that side, which maybe a lot of people don't, and for me that's essential because it all blends in, it all fits together. And that was a really long monologue on that one as well. So that's probably ruined your social media clips.
That's all right. So when we were discussing this last week, we were deciding on having the topic of happiness and joy, because that's what you also speak about. Now, where in your life has happiness and joy really influenced who you are?
You see, that's a really good question, and So anger for me is a very comfortable place because I spent so much time being angry and frustrated that I can slip into that very, very, very easily. And it's like a coat. You put it on, it's like, yeah, this is really comfortable. It fits. It's always good. And when I did a clowning workshop 5 days last year, and we were talking about the expression of joy and happiness, and Dan, who runs the course, you'll say, right, come on, be happy. And you're like, yeah, I'm happy. Whoa. And he went, no, I'm not feeling it. He said, how about anger? And I went, oh, I can do anger. And I did anger. And he looked at me and he went, don't do that again. It's like, okay, because it's such a comfortable place. And I know as I grew up, I talked a lot with therapists about this, about, expressions from other people to me about, saying you've done really, really well or you've done really badly. Everything was very kind of tight and very close. There was no kind of, overtly over the top praise, and there was no real overt criticism. And I think it's because the people around me were so scared that I might flip into anger. And what do? You wrap someone in cotton wool and you look after them and make sure they're okay. So for me, the expression of joy is a really interesting one. And I still find it hard to think about how I would describe that. But probably for me, it comes down to comedy. So it comes down to laughter, and it comes down to being a bit maverick and a bit mischievous. And it comes down to fun, and fun is a huge value for me. If I'm not having fun doing something, if I go to a conference or I go to a workshop and I've had my fill of what I need, I am probably the cheekiest, most disruptive person in the room. But I'm also learning in the background. And people will challenge me and go, "Are you actually listening?" I go, "Yeah, you've just talked about this, this, and this." And I go, "Oh." So for me, it's less about joy and extreme amounts of joy, and it's more about the fun. Everything for me has to be fun. When you said to me, "Will I come on this?" Yeah, because it's going to be fun. We're going to have a conversation which is fun, and I don't have to put a mask on and pretend to be someone else. I've talked openly about anger. I've talked on stage about it a number of times. I share that story with someone. If I have skeletons in my closet door's open, everyone can see it. So it can't hurt me in the way that it used to. So now I have fun with things. And it doesn't mean that things don't catch me out occasionally, because they do big time. But for me, that expression of joy is probably more for me around fun.
And it's there's something that I'm trying to incorporate more into my life, because I know that when I'm having fun, I'm in the flow. And you're not worried about what happened in the past. You're not worried about what's going to happen 10 minutes time or 5 minutes time. You are literally in that moment, and you are having so much fun. Like, I suppose we first met at the PSA, I think it was about 2 years ago. Was that right? I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was the SBS conference in Birmingham, at the VOCO. This is where my memory comes out, and you were doing Speaker Factor.
Yeah, I was on stage. I was literally about to do a 5 minute speech, and I got up, started to speak. The first sentence, literally forgot everything. And then okay, and then I heard the audience saying, "Come on, James! Come on,
Yeah.
James!" So I started again, and again I literally forgot everything. But in that moment, I decided to. I had two choices. I either ran off stage, or I just stay and kind of fight.
Yeah.
And I stayed and fought, and I just allowed it, whatever to come out, it comes out. I must admit, I swore 3 times. Well, what I did have was I did have fun. I wasn't worried about what people thought. I wasn't worried about what's going to be said after. I was just allowing it to come out. And that quite often we get caught up either in the past or in the future.
Yeah.
But when we're having fun in the moment, life, I think, becomes easy because you know what you need to do because you're having fun.
Absolutely. And I remember that. I remember when you did that. And I remember seeing your face and it was very obvious the process you were going through. And I love that you chose just to go, right, I'm here, let's do it. And the support from the audience. And I'm trying to think who won. I know who won. I had to think about who won because I still remember you in many ways more than them because of how you showed up. And it was taking away that prepared bit, and it was going, right, here I am. And it was beautiful to watch. It was, and the word I would put to it is it was present. Presence for me is such a big thing. I've learned that through mindfulness and meditation and the speaker coaching work, the work of Patsy Rodenberg, where she talks about presence, about being in this moment and intentionally doing things from now. There's nothing else going on at the moment other than this conversation. That's the important thing for me. Yes, I know that there's still stuff going on in the world. I'm sure my bank account is lower than it needs to be. I might well have an email which is saying either something which is useful or not. But this is the space to be. Because when you get present, it brings you back to that space you can control. You can control what's going on in this moment. And I delivered last night we do a thing called Menditation, which is men's meditation and mindfulness. And we started the group almost 2.5 years ago now, and it's been amazing. And I still chuckle that they put me at the front of the room and let me whittle on while people's eyes are closed about, take a deep breath in and all this kind of stuff and make it my own. But it's that ability to almost take what's unconsciously going on for people and, take it from under the table and put it out and say, this is what we can all see this. Why are we hiding this and not talking about it? It brings you back to the moment in such a powerful way. And one of the biggest ways, and I didn't realize this until I tried it, one of the biggest ways to be present is to do stand-up comedy. Because you are very acutely aware of whether you are funny or not in that moment because the audience tell you. I did a stand-up comedy hosting last Friday as we record this, and I died on stage quite a lot. And I told them, I said, I've died on stage tonight, and they laugh. And it's because it's true. Truth is funny. That's a best Sherman quote, but she is the person who I go to and talk about comedy a lot. And you get present in that moment. And when you're present in that moment, you kind of realize that things can't hurt you in the same way that you think they can. All the stuff which, okay, there are some things which will hurt you very much in the present, like buses and firearms, but a lot of the stuff which we have to deal with goes on in the 6 inches between the ears. So being present is huge, being in that moment. And you did that at the PSA. It was beautiful to watch. There was just that, yes, I don't know what's going to go on now. And it then wasn't about the competition, it was about you. And it was beautiful to watch. It was memorable.
With regards to presence to do with happiness, how would you define true happiness?
Oh, it's a lie. No, that's the wrong answer. So I have a keynote called How to Be a Happy Human. I thought I'd put it to bed last year and did it a couple of times. I thought that won't come out. I'll go and talk about other things. And then somebody asked me in March to go to a PSA event and do How to Be a Happy Human. I was like, yeah, right, I'll pull How to Be a Happy Human back out. And about 2/3 of the way in, I say to people that I've lied to them. I've said, I've hooked you in with a beautiful title, How to Be a Happy Human. It's alliterative, it's beautiful, it flows, it gives you something. And most people, if you said to them, what do you want from life? They go, I want to be happy. And I say it's got very little to do with happiness. Happiness is an emotion, like joy or sadness or anger or frustration. It is an emotion which we have a very different relationship with. When happiness comes along, we try and hold on to it as tight as we can because we never want it to go. But if we're angry or frustrated, we'll push that away as quickly as possible. And the reality is it comes and goes quite a lot. For me, it's more about contentment. And it's about the recognition of the states that you're in emotionally. Are you angry? Yes, okay. Let's label it as anger. And then what are we going to do with that? Are we going to let it? Are we going to let it? If anger's in the back seat, are we going to let it nudge us out of the way, jump in the car and drive it? Same with happiness. Are we going to do the same? Or is it about contentment and about recognition of those states and going, while I'm in this state where I feel really happy, I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm not going to hold on to it so tight and strive for it to never go away that I miss being happy to hold on to happiness. It's a really interesting, and I've played around with this. I've thought about it, and for me, it comes back to contentment. Happiness is a beautiful thing, but then I think anger is a beautiful thing. I think joy is a beautiful thing. I think sadness is a beautiful thing because for me, it's about creating a space which is available for you to experience all of the beautiful stuff which goes on in life. Because if we were happy all the time, at some point we get bored. At some point we have to have some tension, we have to have some stress. Muscles don't grow unless you go to the gym and do exercise. My abdomen doesn't grow unless I go to the shop and buy chocolate and eat it. There has to be some tension to change that state. And that's where happiness, sadness, joy, anger, all of those things have to be in there. But to have a healthy space in which we can experience those and not feel judgment and not feel judged, whether by others or by ourselves, that for me is the game. And it's really hard to do that. It's really hard because some days that space is really, really big, and other days it's teeny tiny, and you can only fit one emotion in for a very brief moment. It's a really interesting game to play. And I don't know the rules, and I don't even know whether there is a prize at the end.
Nicely put. Because I feel as though it's quite easy to shift, I find, moving from, say, for example, I'm feeling angry, but you acknowledge that anger, allow yourself to feel it. I'm able then to shift to, how do I want to feel? Yeah. And for me, happiness comes down to that idea that not to follow what society wants us to do, or unless that's what makes you happy. If that makes you happy, that is great. Do that. But if you don't find following what society wants you to do makes you happy, then do something that does make you happy. Because I feel as though with happiness and joy, there's a sense that it's about following a purpose, following a reason to live.
Yeah.
Contentment. Usually, and it's not one of these things where it's going to be easy to follow, because if it was easy to follow, everybody would be doing it, and we'll be bored, as you said, because it's just too easy. We, as human beings, like a good challenge. We like a good, as we said, like a good trauma. So it's about just going through this journey, this path of self-discovery and discovering who are we meant to be? Who are we? What at their very core can we teach people that can really help them to grow and to be? And that's what you do with your mental health, your happy place, your happy talks and things like that.
Yeah, it's given people an opportunity to look at things differently, and that realization that we're in a system which we probably can't get out of easily, and we have to adapt to that. I talk with clients about values, particularly around values when it comes to speaking. It's like, who are you? Who are you at your core? What are your behaviors? Because when you go up on stage, you want to express that so that you connect with your audience. And it's the authenticity piece that if you're your authentic self, which is a whole other discussion on its own, then people will connect with you more and you can have a greater impact on people. But to realize that we're in a system which will influence us either consciously or unconsciously, and particularly around things like, if we look at capitalism as a system, capitalism is amazing and it's also awful at the same time, because it means that people change their focus and their purpose not to experience everything that life has to offer, to experience all of those emotions, to have amazing connections and to live a fulfilled life, whatever a fulfilled life is to you. What happens instead is we end up going in the pursuit of money, because what money does is it gives us security and safety. And we know that money is also related to status. And if we've got a lower status, that means that we're rejected by the shop. There's a whole host of things which go on. And so it's tried to find a way about how do we find that meaning and purpose, and that's that answer that big question: why are we here? What is the meaning of life? And I quite often, my girlfriend gets the brunt of this. She'll quite often have me going into a place where I get really down about it, and I talk to a lot of people who, a lot of friends, and they're like, yeah, we talk about money and a company which has done $500 million in turnover and revenue. And my question simply is, to what end? Most people that I come across are in industries where the aim is to make money. Why? To make more money. Why? To make more money, to pay our shareholders, so people can buy nice things. Why? What does that mean? And there are less people in industries which are truly about earning a bit of money so that you can help people. Nursing, for example, medicine, all of those things. The outcome of that is that you improve the quality of someone's life. Coaching, therapy, all of those things. And so for me, I get into this little funk about, well, why are we doing these things anyway? And that's not a happy place for me at all. But I think it really, for me, comes down to understanding what it is, what is it that gives you joy and happiness, and also realizing, again, back to this, is that can generate happiness, or you can generate happiness or sadness or frustration towards it. I can use that as a weapon. I can use that as a way to put water in my car. I can use it to fill it with tea and drink and stay hydrated. Everything has multiple uses. And I can guarantee that something which we might think is the most horrendous thing in the world, there's somebody else in the world who's going, that's a really good opportunity for me. And it's that understanding that it's personal. I get really geeky on science fiction. I could quite happily quote to you lines from Blade Runner, because it's one of the most beautiful things in the world. I get really geeky with Lego. I love to do, I get on the PlayStation and have fun, but then I'm quite happy to sit there with a nice cup of tea and read a book. And then there's so many things which give us joy. The challenge is that there's so many people on social media who are telling us what should give us joy, or what should make us feel a certain thing. And it's that realization that actually that's just, it's just their opinion, man, to quote a bit of The Big Lebowski. And it's working out where we fit in all of that. And that, again, for me, comes down to presence. What's important to me? How do I feel? And when I do my How to Be a Happy Human keynote, I talk about 5 areas. I talk about authenticity. I talk about meaning and purpose. I talk about control and choice. I talk about community and connection, and that's to others and to ourselves, because we can't be truly who we are in isolation. Yes, we would all feel better if we went off and found a desert island and sat on a rock and meditated all day and drank water from coconuts. But we need to understand, we can only understand who we are in the reflection back from other people. And then the 5th one is physiology and biology, which is, how are we looking after our bodies, sleep, nutrition, and that's not my expert area at all. One area I don't talk about is money, because I have no particular interest in it other than, how do I keep the lights on? How do I, have a computer and a camera where I can do these things? Other than that, it doesn't excite me. The pursuit of money is not something which excites me. And I also realize that because I've got enough money to do that there's an inherent privilege in that as well, which messes with my head on many levels. But it's really about exploring what it is for you. and then being okay with that and then expressing that.
You mentioned earlier about what does it mean, and you're talking about people earning lots and lots of money. That's a deep question. That's quite a very, and that can send you down a massive rabbit hole, I think. And it's I think a lot of what it means when it comes to things like building capitalism, like building a business, money, 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 comes down to, as you said, society, but also it's the idea that, yeah, it's security and safety. But is it really security and safety, or does it look like that on the surface?
Hmm.
And another thing you mentioned, values. So how can anybody here listening discover their values?
Oh, that's a really good question. What I do want to touch on, and you might have to ask me that question in a moment, is that idea of safety. So I've talked to clients in the past about the difference between safety and safeness. And I think that money can provide safety. You earn money, that improves your status. You buy nice things. You have a nice car, a nice house, nice clothes, all of those things. But then what you do is you use that money to then pay for ways to protect your things and your status from people taking that away. Secure, big house, security systems, God, whatever it is. Whereas on the other hand, you've got safeness. Safeness is this, I know who I am. And I know that I can walk into a room confident that I am going to be okay. Actually, the views of other people, I think the views of other people always matter because we're always judging and being judged, and that's okay. And we walk into spaces which maybe we're uncomfortable in. It will change us. Our authenticity level will shift. But when you've done that work, when you've looked at who you are, you come from a place of safeness rather than safety, and I think it's a very subtle shift, but it's a much nicer thing. I think that comes with a number of things. I think it comes with age, and it comes with knowing who you are, and it comes with realizing that if there's less years ahead than there are behind, then why am I wasting my time trying to conform to someone else? Why don't I just go and swear at people a bit more and just have more fun doing that? But going back to that question about values, about how do you find your values? There's so many ways of doing it. We know people in the PSA who do behavioural and personality profiling, and describing it that way isn't giving an idea of the true depth of it, because that stuff is amazing. Then I do exercising with clients. There's the very cheesy, very typical, here's a list of words, pick them out. But what I also like to do is I also like to look at people's lives and say, okay, let's draw a line from the beginning of your life through to where you are now. And above the line, let's put experiences which were positive, things which stand out for you as being really highlights of your life. Under the line, put things which were less good, the things which were maybe traumatic or frustrating. And now just write some words, just what comes to mind. And that will give you an idea of the kind of words that you use to describe your experiences. And there'll be patterns which come out as well. There'll be things which appear and you'll go, that's important to me. And even down to that question, what's important to me? I mean, I have three very simple values, which are, well, they were love, learning, freedom, and fun, and then realized that learning was a bit of a trap, and I was just trying to prove that I wasn't dim at school. So for me, there is love, however that's expressed. There is freedom and fun and fairness. In fact, love comes into it less now, maybe. Love is expressed in different ways, but fairness is a huge thing for me. I get really twitchy when I see things which aren't fair. I get really twitchy when I'm not getting the freedoms that I want. And if I'm not having fun, we're not going to play. I'm going to be disruptive. I'm going to be a pain in the ass, and you're going to want to put me in the corner or throw me out. But when you start to explore those values more, you will try a value on, and you'll go, yeah, okay, this seems quite right. But then you might find out that it doesn't fit. So when I was looking previously, and learning was a big one for me, it wasn't just about what could I learn. It was about how can I work with other people to help them grow and develop. It was development and education and learning, not just for me, but for other people, and how I express that. The freedom for me is in many ways is about choice. Choosing to be able to do this on a Thursday morning choosing to be able to get up and go to the gym in the morning, all of those things which fit in with my values, but have taken time to get to that point. I mean, values is something you can find out quite quickly, but to truly test them and retest them and see if they're right requires you to actually, put the jacket on and wear it for a while and see what happens.
My values are freedom, love, growth, wisdom, and there's one more. I can't think of it. But yeah, it's
The fifth one isn't memory, is it? That would be
it's quite, because I do live by them. I do live by, freedom, freedom. I want to build a business where I can go and be where I want, when I want, and not have to worry about money or anything like that. That's freedom to me. So I could literally doing an online business. I could be in New Zealand. Obviously the time difference, but it's it's that way of living. And then for me, love is all about allowing myself to love myself, and then to kind of project that out to other people.
Yep.
And is an idea of growth over the last 10 years, growth's been one of the biggest things I have done. I realize now that I'm never going to stop growing, because with growth comes understanding who you are. It allows you to be better, to take responsibility for your life, to take the steps needed to grow. And finally, the other one, I can't even remember where I was. Wisdom. Yeah, we live in a world that's probably a lot of non-wisdom, but when you have a proper wisdom, you're like in awe of it.
Yeah, and I love those. I love those values, and whether those values resonate with me or not is irrelevant. What resonates with me is the freedom that you're taking to go, these are my values, I'm going to live by them, and it's okay for those values to change. And I think this is where there is a permission which comes with all of this. That to turn around, I mean, I still remember being younger and people going, "Oh, you're a bit of a geek, bit of a nerd," and it was something which was considered bad. Now you look at it now, consider being a geek or being a nerd is. I mean, I had a phrase on my computer for ages, which is "geek shall inherit the earth." Because it is something geeks and nerds express themselves in ways which are just so beautiful to look at. For me, it's cool that I like Star Trek and I like Star Wars. It's cool that I like, I'm a 51-year-old man who will quite happily play with Lego. But it's also absolutely okay to get exquisite joy and happiness and contentment from sitting on a Saturday afternoon in a coffee shop reading a book. And it can be a fantasy book. It can be whatever it is. And it's, in many ways, it's finding joy in the smallest experiences. Because we're so conditioned to go, well, it's more. So, company earns more money. Well, we want to earn more money. So we work harder to earn more money. So we can say that we've earned this much money. Cool. But what about that beautiful thing of saying I can get happiness and contentment from a cup of coffee, sat in a coffee shop, reading a book for an hour? That for me is it feels like it's the ultimate happiness and freedom to be able to take a small thing and get joy from it. Not and it's, think about this in terms of adding sugar to a cup of tea. Is that initially you'll add one sugar and you go, oh, this is nice. But then a few weeks later of doing that, it won't be enough. You'll have to add 2 and you go, oh, this is nice. And then and then 3. And there comes a point where you have to keep increasing the dose, increasing that medicine. And then, but being able to actually sit back and go, but actually, what if I was to just focus on this moment? And this is the presence thing again, is, well, what if I was to just look at this moment in time, and instead of going, oh, well, I'm bored or I don't know what to do, tap into different things. And this is where the mindfulness and meditation stuff comes in. We were talking about it last night. Talking about expanding your focus from the breath to the body to the feeling of the clothes on your skin. Because how many times do people sit there and go, well, I can feel the clothes on my skin? the blanket they're wearing, maybe the eye mask they're wearing, to the temperature in the room, to the sounds of other people in the room, to the noises of the traffic going by, to the flicker of the candles through their eyelids. All of these things where it's, instead of going outwards and going, we need to have bigger and better things, but actually going inwards and going, what can I feel in my experience now? The breathing, that if you ever do, you meditation, you do a guided meditation and you realize that quite often the in-breath and the out-breath are of different lengths. And the gap between the in-breath and the out-breath is it's like that moment as you drive along a road and you go over a hump and you just feel yourself, gravity's gone. I feel like I'm floating, and then you come back down again. But you notice these things when instead of going out and going, I need more stuff, I need more sugar, I need more cars, I need more money, and going in and going, actually, what's here? What's in this moment? And that for me, that gets me excited. And to be honest, I love that. But at the same time, I can't do that all the time. Sometimes I do need to watch Netflix. Sometimes I do need to go and do a bit of retail therapy. I do need to buy something or buy chocolate, whatever it is. But it's that ability to be able to move between those different states. And that's where the presence comes in as well, is going, well, what do I need in this moment? Or what do I want in this moment? Or what should I do in this moment? It's fascinating and fun. And as you can tell, I get all geeked out about it, which is why I just monologue about it whenever I get the chance. But it's just cool stuff to work with.
Is the idea that with presence and the ability to slow down, literally, because we live in such a fast-paced world that we're always on the go, 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 go. And there's this idea of literally just slow down. I catch myself quite often throughout the day, and I'm just in my head, just like going from one thing to another thing to another thing. And there's no enjoyment, there's no happiness or joy from going from one thing to another thing. I feel like you're almost doing it just through the endless pursuit of doing. And there's with presence, there comes this idea that just the other day I was working with inner beauty. So I realized that I sometimes project my beauty onto other people. I might see a beautiful woman and I'm projecting my own beauty onto them. So I bring my beauty back into myself, allow myself to feel that inner beauty. And the other day, yesterday, I was walking and literally allowed myself to feel that inner beauty, and I allowed myself to observe the nature around me.
Mm.
And even just the other day, I was on the back of a fire engine. And
that was random. I was on the back of a fire engine.
I'm 14 years into fire service.
That explains it. I was going to say, I've now got this vision of a fireman going, James, just get off the back of the wagon. I've told you this before.
Yeah. So real life fireman Sam. So I was on the back of the fire engine, and I just allowed myself to observe going through a town. Now, I wouldn't usually see a town as beautiful, but because I was observing my own inner beauty, I was able to see, as we're traveling around, the beauty of the built-up roads, the beauty of the houses, the people walking. And yeah, that's just through being present in our own body and being able to really enjoy that moment.
Oh, I lost your sound then.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, sound's gone. Can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You're back now.
It's working. My internet is unstable. Hold on. I can take out all this bit. Not an issue. Hold on. Oh, my internet's back. It's all right.
There you go. Go in a moment.
It's all good. Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you now.
Okay. So, yeah, there's just this sense of presence and being present in that moment that gave me that joy and that beauty. And it was a profound experience because I've never really had that before.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's beautiful. And when I when I teach the guys mindfulness and meditation, I talk about the breath, and I talk about the breath, the fact that the breath is there all the time. We just don't notice it. It's doing its autonomic nervous system thing, going along, keeping us alive. But if you ever need to anchor yourself on something, the breath is there. And I have lots of conversations with people where they go, oh, I can't meditate. I don't know how to do that. I can't calm my brain down. And it's like, well, the aim is not to calm your brain down. The aim is to recognize your brain. And actually, the shortest meditation is an in-breath, a hold, an out-breath, a hold. That's a meditation. But being able to notice things around you and have questions. And my girlfriend's really, really curious. She's far more curious than I am. I don't ask enough questions that go deeper on levels. She is like a surgeon. She's just like, oh, what's in here? Oh, what's underneath? And sometimes it's just like, no, stop asking. Just I need a bit of a break. But it's really interesting where she gets curious and you ask questions like, who first thought about how to lay bricks for a house? What was the thought process they went through? What was the discovery? Where they went, oh, if you have a brick of this width, this size, and this material, that we can make it, and what needed to happen to get to that point? Because we walk along here, there's a huge building over there. It's a council car park, which is closed. I can demolish it at some point. It's fully brick. I've got bricks on the wall here. Who kind of went, oh, these bricks all fit together in this way, and if I use this particular material made up in this way, and I put it here, and I leave it for a set amount of time. All these things. Who when you're on the back of the fire wagon, who was the person who decided how long the ladders have to be, how those ladders fit together, the mechanism, who then stress tested it? And one of the things when you talk about fire, I didn't realize about the fire stuff, which is really interesting. There's a story, and I'm assuming this is a true story. And if it isn't a true story, it's an urban legend. I don't care. I still love it. Is that there was a fire chief who turned up at a fire, and just before they were about to go in through the door, he stopped and said, "No, everyone back." And everyone stepped back, and then a few seconds later, there was an explosion in the building. And somebody came to him afterwards and said, "Why? What was it? What was it that made you do that?" Because there were no signs at all that was going to happen. There was no warning at all, and yet you went, "No, everyone back," and there was an explosion. Did you plant a bomb? It was that kind of thing. And the guy said, "So well," he said, "the thing is," he said, "I remember when I was very early on in the fire service, I remember a very similar experience, and there was something which changed in the air, which I was very aware of it. The air was like changed direction a little bit. There was a subtle shift," he said, "and I instantly in that moment recognized that was probably going to happen. And I just made that call, a very intuition, pattern recognition thing. If he hadn't have been present for that, how many people might have died?" And like I say, I don't know whether that's a true story or not. I like it as a story because how many times do we miss out on things, or do we make decisions which aren't great because we're not present? How many times do we moan about being stuck in traffic, but actually the very fact we're stuck in traffic at this point, which adds an extra 5 minutes to our journey, might mean that we miss being in a crash. Whereas if we were rushing through, we might be in a crash. It's all those little what ifs and curious questions. And my poor brummy brain doesn't have space for all of these things most of the time, but occasionally it just catches me and I go, "Oh, what if? Who invented that? That's a bit weird, isn't it?" But even just you're on the back of the fire wagon driving down the street, and you think about, in every house there is at least one person, and that one person has a number of years' experience and a life and stories. And then you start to look at the scope of that. How many stories are there? How many lives? How many of it overlaps? How many things are different or new? How many people? And this was one of the things which I really remember from working in the nursing home, one of my first jobs, was that you saw this person as somebody whose mobility wasn't good, probably was going to drop food down them, may well be demented, may well be confused, may well be incontinent and able to care for stuff. But if you only ever sort of dwelt on that, you forgot that they'd got decades of experience where it was love and loss and commitment and achievement and choice and control. And they got things going back to a time in the world which I only ever read about in history books. Yet you have this living, breathing person in front of you who, if they are confused, probably remembers more about Just thought now of a guy called Bert I used to look after who reminded me once of, I think it was like something like the 1935 beauty queen from Wolverhampton called Queenie Braun. It's amazing what you remember. But all these memories and all these experiences which we don't tap into, and those are all out there. But while we're in this pursuit of more money, faster cars, nicer internet, more beautiful clothes, all of these things I think are absolutely fine. And I think we should earn money so that we can have that base of support, but it's what we do on top of that. AI, beautiful, love it, use it most days. It knows more about me than my therapist. It is wonderful. But if we only ever use it to do things faster and quicker and to make more money, we're missing out on what it can do for us so we can be more human. That's my view. I could be wrong. That's a hill I'll die on. And I might be wrong, but we shall see.
It brings us back actually quite nicely to the question of what is happiness, what is joy, and how does that incorporate in our life? From what we just spoke about, I feel almost as though we answered our own question there, because underneath the surface of present and being present, there's that idea that we have all these senses, all these so hearing, smelling, touching, our intuitive senses. And when we combine all of them, there's almost that sense of like, I'm just moving my hand along my mic, touching my desk, and there's all them senses, and there's almost that enjoyment, that joy of actually witnessing our surroundings, but in this present moment. There's almost like drinking a glass of water. That smoothness of water going down across your mouth, through your tongue, down your throat. There's almost that sense of curiosity, of discovering new things about not just our surroundings, but about ourselves, and understanding that happiness and joy is just something that we have right now in this moment, and it's something that we can have in an instant, but it has to be a level of deeper understanding of who we actually are.
Yeah, and there's a phrase which is, happiness is a choice, or happiness is an inner game, and I'm totally on board with that. The caveat I would always add to that is it's much easier to be happier when you have enough money to survive. And that's because of the society around us. And me and my friend Alex Williams, when we did our podcast, we talk about this a lot, is, it's almost like I see all these people on social media who turn around and say, you must look after yourself, you must take time for yourselves. But they're usually the people who for many years haven't looked after themselves, haven't taken time for themselves, and now are in a privileged position where they can do it. The real goal for me is that your average individual is able to take the time which they need for themselves. Because happiness is a choice. It isn't in a game, but there are certain things which are stacked in our favor for that, and there are certain things which are stacked against us. What I always find amusing with happiness is that happiness is correlated to income. Depending on which studies you read, if you read, there's a study from about 2010 which shows that it's correlated with income up to a certain point, and then afterwards it makes no difference. There's another one which shows it is correlated and it continues upwards. And when you look at the research in a bit more detail, what it suggests is that it's not about pure happiness; it's about absence of worry. And those are very different things. If I don't have to worry, that doesn't mean I'm happy, because you can be in a situation where you don't have to worry and you can be very unhappy. So it isn't in a game. It's a choice, and start small by looking around you. I mean, I at one point I am going to find a way of peeling off a Post-it note and sticking it on something where it doesn't curl up at the edges. That in fact, that could be a lifetime. That could be a focus for a lifetime. But it starts small. Start with the little stuff and find the joy in that. And if you don't find joy in that thing, find someone else you find joy, or something or someone, and just work your way through until you find something, and then go, that gives me joy. I'm going to enjoy it. That makes me happy. I'm going to enjoy it. That makes me sad and angry. I'm going to avoid it. You get to decide, and you get to choose, not some social media influencer on Instagram who's trying to sell you a $97 product to make you happy and telling you what happiness is about. It's all in here.
So it leads us on quite nicely to probably the last bit. When it comes to people going through challenges, how can they explore that idea of happiness being in the game? What kind of things can they do daily in order to step into that feeling?
A really good question. I think one of the first thing I say is that people are not alone with these things. We think that our experience is 100% unique and no one ever feels what we feel, and that's not true. So there will be other people out there who feel what you feel, and be around them. The other thing is, for me, it comes back to a lot of the simple practices. It's look after your body, move, get good sleep, get good nutrition, all of the things which are not sexy and are dull and boring, to make sure that you are clear on who you are, the authenticity piece, the values. Know who you are. Have some kind of control or choice over what you do. So make sure that if you're choosing some time during the day to do something and controlling that, you have that for you, and then connect back to yourself. Some people that's meditation and mindfulness. Some people that's exercise. Some people it's cooking. Some people whatever it is, but also be connecting with other people as well. I quite often think that, and I saw this a lot when I was nursing, is you find people who choke. They swallow something, they choke. What they don't do is they don't go in front of people and go, help me out, I'm choking. They actually move themselves to a place where they're away from other people because they don't want to be a burden. They're embarrassed by it. And I think that seems to happen quite a lot with how people feel. People want to move. If they're not feeling great, they want to move away from other people because they don't want other people to feel what they're feeling. And actually, the best things they can do sometimes is actually move towards other people because you're probably going to find that you're not alone and someone can help. And that's where I'd begin. And I'm always open for the fact that all of that stuff could be wrong, and you just have to find out what works for you.
There's a level of acceptance as well of where you are.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've come to realize over my journey is that if, for example, I'm angry and I try to run away from that, it's just going to run after me. So the best thing I've come to realize myself is that just almost face it and take it and almost open arms. Accept it for what it is. It's anger. Just come here, anger. Come here. Let me give you a bit of love and attention.
Yeah.
And I know I've done it for many years, but I realized that if I allow this feeling or emotion to come into me and to accept it for what it is, it disappears. And I get something better on the other side. But if you run away from it, it chases you down the alleyway, and it's never going to leave you. So the more that we turn and face these things, even dread, despair, frustration, overwhelm, procrastination, all these things, we should head straight, we should accept it with open arms. And then once we've accepted it and taken a few deep breaths, you can ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do now to step forward?
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you can't face it head on, which is okay, even if you just kind of stand sideways and know it's there. And there's a phrase I love, which is that thinking isn't the problem, it's the thinking about thinking. Anger isn't a problem until you take it into another direction. And I've heard all kinds of things where, an emotion appears for 20 seconds and off it goes, it dissipates. But when we hold on to it, that's when we turn it into something else. You do make that choice. And I also acknowledge that there are times when making that choice is hard. And there are times as well when I've had recently, the phrase I use quite often when people ask how I'm doing is, I just want to throat punch the universe. I just feel like I want to lash out at things. And I'm very lucky. I've got people around me who've been able to create an environment which has been really good for me. And they've let that run through and given me a different viewpoint when I've needed it. But sometimes you just need to be in that space where you're feeling things which aren't great. And then that's okay. But also having the emotional intelligence and the curiosity to go, well, okay, how long do I want to feel this for? Because it's okay to feel bad or grief or whatever in the moment. The question is, how long do you want to feel this for? And that's where if you're in my opinion, if you're not careful, anger for me in particular, anger became an identity rather than an emotion which passed through, and I had to change that relationship with it, even to the point where somebody actually once said, well, you're just an angry person. I turned around, no, that's not true. I said, anger is an emotion which I experience, so we can drop that label of labeling me as angry. I said, because you get angry as well. I didn't like that very much, and that's okay. But that acceptance, another favorite phrase of mine is don't argue with reality, because reality will always win. You play with it. It's fun. It's like holding an egg. You hold it too tight, you break it. You don't hold it enough, you drop it on the floor. It's just right. You got to, or if all else fails, you just boil it or scramble it.
What is it that you do?
What do? I help business owners and leaders to speak with authenticity, fun, and confidence. So I take people who want to be seen and heard, whether it's part of their business or have a message to share, and I help them with the skills while maintaining who they are. So for me, it's about amplifying who you are with some speaky skills on the side in order to do that. And that's one of the things I do. Other stuff I do, host events, do keynote speaking, and then a bit stand-up comedy and stand-up comedy hosting on the side.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolutely incredible conversation. I even went off script and just let the conversation flow. So, yeah.
Yes, we've got fun and freedom. Yes. No, I really appreciate it, James. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite. It's been a delightful conversation. It really has. This is lovely. This is the kind of stuff I live for, is conversations like this. Thank you.
Thank you.